Hello, welcome back to the Alabama CPA podcast. I'm your host, Rob Pearson, and we are recording again live from the annual meeting here at the club, and it has been a beautiful event, a lot of great speakers today. Joe Crosby is among them. Joe, thank you for being with us. He is the CEO of Multistate and really follows and affects tax policy all over this country. And keeps up with economic trends and gave a fascinating presentation to the attendees here. Our largest group of attendees, Joe, by the way. So it's been a fantastic meeting, and you're being able to bring your perspective has been important today. So again, welcome in.
Thank you, Rob.
Where are you
it's great to be
from?
here. I came in today from Virginia.
Holy moly!
Based in the D.C. area.
I hope it's not raining in Virginia.
I wish it were. We're experiencing quite a drought, so I'm kind of jealous of the rain you're getting down here.
Well, we've got enough of it in the last month. We'll send you some.
That'd be good.
This may be heading your way as it turns out. But thank you again for your time. We know you're on tight travel schedule, but let's get right into it. You know, every year it sort of brings different complexities and different things, but in our state in particular, in Alabama, we'll try to keep it somewhat centric to Alabama. Our budget chairmen have been warning that we've had some great years, whether it's interest income based on cash balances that don't exist, and the interest rates are down, or whatever the case may be. Sales taxes are sort of flat. They've been warning that this day was coming where our belts were going to get just a little bit tighter than they have been the last 6 or 7 years. Is that what you're seeing around the country?
It definitely is, Rob. I think it's exacerbated in states like Alabama where there have been some tax reductions, and that's a good thing for the people. Mm-hmm. But in doing that, the government has had to budget with the expectation that over time revenues are going to come down. We saw during the pandemic a real divergence in the states. Some of the states that have a more progressive mindset really raised spending. Alabama and a number of other southern states particularly looked at the additional revenue coming in and said we need to budget conservatively, and we're going to also do some tax cuts. And so, that's the course that Alabama's been on for the past 5 years. But at some point in time, that extraordinary surplus spending from the federal government and all that fed through the economy comes down. And so that belt tightening, I think it is wise to forecast that, because you can't always cut taxes, keep the spending at the same level, and expect things will continue. So we are seeing it in a lot of other states as well.
And I think it's certainly been interesting because the ways that Alabama has cut spending, there was a famous eliminating overtime, the first jurisdiction to ever do that, eliminating tax on overtime, and it went way too far.
Yes,
as
right.
Where they projected about a $40 million cost to the state. I say cost to the state, but not collecting that much tax. And it turned out to be about $400 million, and so they had to claw that back, and now they've done a much smaller scale version of that to sort of piggyback what the federal did. But I think it sort of helped the federal come up with that policy of the overtime exemption that they have now, which, quite frankly, I think works pretty well.
That is really an interesting point in that we're seeing unusual proposals out of the federal government that we haven't before, like overtime, tips, things along those lines, and it's difficult for states because the federal government gets the deficit spend and the state doesn't. So they can pick those things up. And I think sometimes when they're enacted, it's not necessarily understood how much it's going to be. I mean, the overtime really affects first responders, police, fire, EMTs, other sorts of things. And that's a pretty powerful constituency too. So once you've provided the benefit, so to speak, it's hard to get it back.
That's correct. Especially firemen, where I know the overtime is a tremendous amount of money.
It is. And I understand the rationale on the one hand, but on the other hand, I mean, spend a lot of time doing public finance and tax, and I don't understand why some income should be special and some income shouldn't, because it ends up just falling then on somebody else. So,
which leads me to a very much broader sort of question, I guess, to you, because you're neck deep in tax policy all the time, right? And so, some things that keep coming to mind. Number one is, the federal tax code in particular, maybe more so than most, is a progressive tax. As the more you make, the higher percentage you pay. We're all familiar with that. It also gives the federal government an ability to sort of incentivize certain behavior, give to charity, buy a house, that sort of thing. a lot of the proposals come out seem to be contra to that. And by the way, there's an ability to bear principle. I think that maybe
the ability to pay, right?
Is right. So when you see tax proposals come out and they don't match one of those, what principle am I missing? Where some of these tax proposals don't really match some of the principles that I just mentioned.
It's a larger question, I think, and I talked a little bit about it earlier today in terms of it doesn't really matter what party you're in Congress. There's not the same appetite that there used to be for matching spending with revenues. Now it's spend what we need to spend or what we want to spend, and the revenues will be what they'll be, and we're supposedly unconcerned with the deficits. I mean, we have Republican control of both chambers of commerce and Congress, and the presidency right now, and spending is not going down. And so, I don't know that you're missing a principle. I mean, fundamentally, there are two justifications for taxation: ability to pay or benefits received. I don't hear people talking about those things in Congress. They simply talk about well, here's a good idea. How about we do this? How about we do that? And what happens then is there's no one there to say well, these things don't match up. They don't make sense together. What overarching are we doing? And I don't think there is necessarily an overarching. What are we doing now? I think it's here's where we can cobble together the votes.
And even on the state level, there's where this is a runoff election day, and this is not necessarily a knock on one county.
Not a great day out there for a runoff election.
Turnout's going to be a struggle, I think, based on the weather. But when you get into sort of a race to the right for Republicans, a race to the left of Democrats, and you get to talking about things like eliminating the income tax in Alabama, which is already 5%, but now there's talk of maybe joining other states. Mississippi's had an initiative, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, that those right around us who don't have income tax. How does it come into play that there are certain things that still need to be? And look, I'm for eliminating a lot of taxes. I have to pay them too, but there are state government functions that we all count on. How are people talking about how do we balance that?
It seems to be a predicament of the human condition that we always look across the fence and see they're doing this, why can't we do that?
Yeah.
And not looking at the other side of it. Property taxes in Texas are a lot higher than they are in Alabama. So fundamentally, there's no magic pot of money, right? The money all has to come from somewhere, and every state does it a little bit differently. So if you want to get rid of the income tax, you're going to end up paying for it some other way. Maybe you like it better, maybe you don't. I don't really know, but I think that a lot of these proposals, and as I mentioned in my presentation, now we're seeing in Texas and Florida concerns about the property tax. They're both low-spending states. I mean, fundamentally, it comes back to when I had this conversation with a state Senate president a few years ago, and he was like, how come Tennessee can get away with no income tax, and how come North Carolina can have such a low income tax, and I won't mention the state, but our tax is so much higher? And I said, it's pretty simple. You spend more per capita than they do, and they generate more personal income per capita than you do. So really the goal here is to help people generate more personal income. Is cutting the tax going to do that, or eliminating the tax going to be that? I mean, I can't say. A lot of people would say, yes, if we get rid of the tax, people are going to move to Alabama. We're going to raise wages. All that good stuff's going to happen. I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's not the whole thing, and you're going to end up making it up somewhere else. And where are you going to get it? So, I mean, I agree with you fundamentally. Unless you do these things and at the same time cut the spending, and where are you cutting the spending? Schools, fire, roads, I don't know. It's a tough thing.
In the end, it becomes which group are you looking to help the most?
Right.
Is it the companies or the workers, and which kind of comes first, right?
Yeah.
So it's really almost an age-old question in politics.
It is. And I look at it from the sore thumb perspective. Is the 5% income tax really stopping people from moving to Alabama? I don't know. I doubt it myself, because people, 5% is about a little bit below the average for states. So, yes, you're higher than Texas and higher than Florida, but you're not out of line. Nobody's going to look at that and say well, dadgum, I'm not going there because I have to spend 5% instead of 4% in North Carolina.
We've got an election. Obviously, we'll have another governor. We'll have a changeover in this quadrennium to some degree. My guess is there will be some conversation around what the Alabama tax code looks like. How can CPAs? I would think CPAs are the perfect people to get involved in this. And myself, if you're talking to Rob, not just the profession, but how can I get involved in those conversations on behalf of our state CPAs who understand the tax code best?
I'm glad you asked, and I'm not just going to say this because we're standing here, but the number one thing is to get involved with the society because they are your voice at the Capitol. So that's really the easiest thing to do, to just get involved, because they need people to help review the proposals that are coming out and make sure that it's not necessarily to say Alabama should cut the rates or Alabama should do this. It's to say this is going to cause a problem because you're not lining up with the federal code, or there's an unintended consequence. Second thing is just to get involved with your local representatives. People in Alabama are approachable. You've got citizen legislature. Say like, hey, I'm a CPA. I live in your jurisdiction. I shared a story when I was up on the stage a little while ago, and my new senator came in and I disagreed with some of her proposals. I let her know right away.
And they really generally, as I've seen working with the legislature the last couple of years, they're really good people, and they do have, sometimes they'll have an idea. We had a senator who's serving out his last year in the Senate, but he is of the mindset that we need to take the corporate tax rate down from 6.5% to below 5% because of how it looks around the country if you're comparing. But they also don't tell you is that income tax is deductible.
You still have the deductibility, right?
So it's all relative, right?
Right.
So but just to sort of ask you, because you look at it on a national perspective, how much are people looking at that extra 0.5% that maybe it makes a difference?
I think when it comes to economic development, so attracting a new investment, whether it's a company that's not here that wants to move here, or whether it's a company that's already here and is planning to expand, they're always going to look at first, where can I do what I need to do? Meaning, like, where's the land availability? Where's the people availability? The connectivity, whatever it happens to be. So those are always going to be the first factors. And then when it comes down to that final 3-5 states, whatever it might be, then taxes do come into play. I don't think 0.5% here or there is going to make a difference. In my experience, yes, having a low tax burden overall is important. But what's equally important is that there's not a lot of yo-yoing in that tax burden, that you're going to get fair treatment over time, and that the experience of the taxpayers that are already there is that when the government set the policy, that policy continued. Again, my state of Virginia, we're dealing with that now, largest data center concentration in the world. And the reason we don't have a budget now is because they're trying to get rid of the exemption for sales tax on equipment purchases. But they're doing it for projects that have already been announced and built with that in mind. So that's sort of uncertainty.
With those agreements in place.
Yes,
probably,
exactly. That's exactly right. So it's not retroactive per se, but it is vitiating those agreements that have already been made if they do it. That's the sort of thing where then decision makers have to say, like, can I do business with this jurisdiction? Because if I invest here today under this set of rules, it might be a different set of rules going forward.
It's a level of trust is what you're saying.
That's right. Yeah. And a commitment to consistency regardless of party. And other states have done that. And in fact, Virginia's historically done it well. Virginia, has a well-deserved reputation as a good place to do business, despite having, change in party control. But that might be changing in Virginia today with goes back to your point about with the Democrats going to the left and Republicans going to the right. We're seeing that all over the place, and we just don't have as many business centrists as we used to.
It may be putting you on the spot. It may be an unfair question. If it is, tell me so, and that's fine. I've gotten that before. You see a lot of states, their taxes, how it's sort of structured. What's the one thing about Alabama you kind of wish Alabama would change?
Alabama has gone a long way to fixing sales tax. When you look at Alabama compared to other states, there are an enormous number of taxing jurisdictions, and it's not just sales tax; it's all kinds of local business taxes, fees, vehicle taxes. I mean, I saw a schedule, and this may be apocryphal, but it's something like 40,000 different rows that the ADOR maintains for different vehicle fees and other sort of local taxes. I mean, to me, there is an issue with ensuring that local governments have authority to levy the taxes they need to do the work they need to do. But, I mean, having some sort of consistency and some statewide base is useful. That would be the one thing.
That's an argument for what we call the SSU2, simple sales tax, for sales taxes from out-of-state businesses.
And I know there's some litigation going on with regard to that.
No, it's been
has it been resolved?
Resolved
okay.
For now. There's always a risk that it could rear its ugly head again. But for now, it's been resolved because I think they realized that you know, what is, because of the simplicity of it, it meets all the criteria. And we are collecting. It keeps going up every year. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I do think that, you know, things like that are important. If you look at, like, the objective is to do X, is there a simpler way to get there? If there is, we should do the simpler way. You know, can we maintain the local control, the local authority, and also do it in a way that's easier for multi-state businesses to comply? Yeah, then we should.
To your point, that the issue was that you've got counties, you've got municipalities, you've got bigger municipalities, and everybody sort of wanted to know how much of their how big a slice was I getting, and it's not enough for anybody,
right,
of course, and so there's no real right way to do it, I don't think, but they tried and they came up with a solution. And can that be tweaked? I'm sure it can.
Yeah, but it certainly is an improvement over where things were before.
Oh man, it's beautiful. So Joe, thank you again for your
Rob.
time.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
for speaking to our group, and I hope we see you again soon. And I tell you what, I'm going to get your contact, and we're going to have you on the podcast again as things change.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Joe Crosby, CEO from Multistate, again here with us on the Alabama CPA podcast.